Welcome to all our guests joining us this evening. My name is Matt Hall and I'm the Director of Marketing Admissions at the Australian School. Before we get started, there's a few administrative tasks that I'd like to remind you about. This is going to be an interactive webinar where you'll be able to write questions into the question bar and we will answer them. If it comes up timely, we'll try and slip those questions in. However, we do have a designed question and answer section at the end, and that would be the best possible time to do that. This is our second episode of the year in our webinar series called Into the Classroom, where we celebrate the many talented educators from across our 3 sub-schools. Today, we are featuring Aleesha Spencer from our early years. Aleesha has had a teaching career spanning from her home country in Ireland to Abu Dhabi, to Malaysia, and now to AIS. She's a highly regarded educator in the early years where she has taught across a range of year groups and has developed an area of expertise in self-regulation. With that in mind, Aleesha, welcome.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Yeah, really happy to be here and to share, I guess, all the experiences that I've had over the past years of teaching in the early years.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I gave a brief introduction to you prior to AIS. Can you tell us a bit about your past and your journey to join us at our school?
Yeah, so I guess my journey started obviously in Ireland, where I'm from, in Dublin, where I studied early childhood education with the, I guess, focus on Montessori education. And then throughout my time, I decided to move abroad. I went to Abu Dhabi and worked in an international school there, which led me then to move to Kuala Lumpur with another experience in another international school there. And now in Singapore, I've been here now for almost 3 years, working here at AIS in the Early Learning Village. And I guess here is where I really gain that knowledge of the topic we'll be talking about today, self-regulation, and just its importance within our early learners. I guess we've got the children here from 0 to 6 in the Early Learning Village, but as again, it goes way beyond the early years too, but I guess it's solidified in the early years. So here is where I really gained my experience and my knowledge of self-regulation.
It really intrigues me. We've had a brief conversation around this area before, but just for the audience sake, could you give us an introduction? What does self-regulation mean? And what does it mean in the early years setting?
Yeah, so I guess out there, there's so many different theories about self-regulation and definitions about self-reg and what it is. But what we, I guess, believe it is, it's that ability to manage your own stress and manage stressors that arise within your environment and within your everyday life. So it's just that ability to manage and to cope with those stressors, be aware of them, be able to have those strategies to cope, and yeah, just manage that emotional the emotions that arise from, I guess, certain situations and your behavior.
I've got this wonderful slide that I've got here. Could you help the audience talk through what its meaning is and how this fits in with self-regulation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, one of the most important things that we gained, and I think, what's really important to make everybody aware in the early years here, we all have attended a really, really important certification of self-regulation by a wonderful man called Dr. Stuart Shanker and his partner as well, Dr. Susan Hopkins, who really, introduced to us in the early years the importance of self-reg and where it really comes from. And a lot of it stems from, a lot of science background of what actually happens within our body, within our brains, when we, I guess, experience a stressor within our life. And when we talk about stressors, it could be anything from too much noise, big crowds could be a big stressor. Yeah. Other people can be stressors to certain people. So When we look about those stressors and what happens in the brain when we I guess experience a stressor, that's something that's really, I guess, focused on within the self-reg certification. And then, so when we look at the brain here, I've actually got this little glove here with me to explain it a little bit better. So I'm going to pop it on. And yeah, so so this is my little glove here. And there's also, if anybody wanted to look up, there's a really wonderful man as well called Dan Siegel, who talks about this a lot, and people can look into this more. But we explain it. So the blue brain here is basically your prefrontal cortex, which is, just behind your forehead here. And the red part of your brain is your limbic system, which deals with your emotions. It's also containing, that important part of your brain called the amygdala that I guess it helps with that fight or flight response. That your fear is controlled in that part of your brain. So we've got the blue brain and your red brain. So when we look into the brain, and when we look into self-reg, when we look into stressors, we really, look deep into what's happening, and especially what's happening within our brain. So if you can have a look here, and we have our amygdala here. So if you can imagine, a child having a tantrum, and we're really trying to figure out what's happening here. So usually, those stressors are building up. They're really building up in the brain. So at the beginning of your day, you've got that prefrontal cortex ready. It's being balanced. It's helping your brain be balanced. It's helping your body to be balanced. So we've got that there, covering the amygdala, protecting it, if you want to think of it in that way. But what's happening in the body is those stressors are building up and building up and building up. So inside here, you can just have a little picture in your brain where those stressors are building up and building up. And that stress in your body is building up. And, for children that are, again, between the ages of 0 and 6, they really don't have that ability yet to be able to manage that stress. What's happening, if they don't have anybody else involved, what's happening is, it's building up and it's building up. And what happens is you can almost, if you know this term, flipping the lid, it flips. And that's where you see the tantrums. That's where you start to see different behaviors. So when we look into the brain and when we see, that side of things, you really realize what's happening deeper for that child. And it's really important for us as the adults in our children's lives to be there to help, put that cap back on to help those child, self-regulate. So again, imagine those stresses building up, flipping the lid, and that's when you start to see behaviors and that, inability to regulate. So it's really important with that vision, to look deeper into the brain and to see what's really happening for our children and ourselves when we've got too much stress.
I love the way that you use that glove and that analogy about flipping the lid. That's a fantastic one to give us an idea about that. I love the science behind that, and we're talking about the small reptilian brain, the inside there, like you said, in the limbic system and our big prefrontal cortex. I love the science behind that. Can you, for the parents' sake, bring this to life, how you use self-regulation then to help the children? So what that might look like in real life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Matthew, maybe it might be a good point to bring up that video of that I showed you before, just showing those hidden stressors of that child, and we can talk deeper about that.
So if I just pause there, can you just talk us through what we've seen so far?
Yeah, so I guess, at the beginning, that child and parent have gone to the supermarket, and, all of a sudden that flip of the brain, something's happened, something's caused that stress, and the child is feeling, those emotions, and that behavior is coming out within that child's emotions. Um, and I guess what you're seeing then sometimes with parents when they see these emotions in children, they can assume what's happened in that moment, but it's those hidden stressors that we really try and find and really try and see. So we almost have to become those stress detectives. We've got to really find the why behind the behavior. And as you can see in the video, there's been something that's happened earlier on that day. That child was at the playground, their teddy bear fell on the floor, and it's the biggest deal in the world for that child. If that teddy bear is that child's comfort toy, and that's how they feel that sense of safety and belonging, and their teddy's fallen on the floor, and it's a huge stressor for them. So again, that's that hidden stressor where that's happened earlier on that day, but it's building up and up and up within the brain. And if you want to press play again, you'll see again that hidden stressor that's happened.
Where does it go?
Small children have big feelings. Our children's behavior.
Yeah, so as you can see, there's those hidden stressors that have happened throughout the day and throughout the child's day. And it might not even be just in a 24-hour period. Something could have happened during the nighttime, or just before they've gone to sleep. And that stress has stayed in the body until the next morning. And you're seeing those behaviors and those emotions come again in the morning time. So, it's really important that when we find, I guess, when we see those behaviors and we see certain emotions and those, the tantrums, your typical, you say those terrible twos. And, when you see those, that you find the why, you really dig deep into what's happening for that child, and look into those hidden stressors. Think back about what's happened earlier on that day that might be that building up, and then maybe causing that emotion at the very end, where at the start of the video when you saw that child become stressed in the supermarket. So it's really figuring out the why behind the behavior.
Well, that's really interesting. I haven't thought of it like that, so I didn't even realize that. So what you're saying to me, if I'm right, is what you're seeing there with the child being in distress might not have been caused by something immediate. Is that right? So it's been something prior that could be upsetting the child that's sitting with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be something that you just have no idea about, and it's not in the moment. Now, don't get me wrong, supermarkets are stressful, so that can just be an added stress. But as it's building up throughout the day, that just tiny little bit of an added stress at the end has just caused it too much, and it's caused the lid to flip. And it's just really important to find out the why. And I guess in a supermarket there can be so many stressors, like I said before: too much noise, overcrowded, just that overstimulation that causes that stress to build, and thus causing those emotions and behaviors to arise.
It reminds me of this slide here that we've had also. I'll just bring this next slide up with the iceberg.
Yes, yeah.
This particular one here resonates with just what you're saying now. Is that right? Is that what you're...
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, on the top, you've got that unexpected behavior, behavior or emotion that has come. Sometimes you see a child and that emotion is just that outburst of emotion that you have no idea where it's come from, what's happened. And it's just looking underneath. It's that really digging deep down into the why behind the behavior. And what we can kind of see is that there's those 5 domains. So you can see it's biological, emotional, cognitive, social, and pro-social. And within these spheres, there's so many different stresses. So I guess, like biological, are you too hot? Are you feeling too cold? That's the stressor. That emotional side, that social side, is it too crowded? Is there too many people here? We often see in a school setting between transitions from one place to another, and within that transition, if there's too many people around, there's a stressor. Your pro-social stressor. So can you manage and cope with stress of another person? So if a child is seeing another child upset or another child stressed, are they able to manage their own emotions to cope with that? So you've got, again, like I said, just to be those stress detectives and to really see the why behind the behavior. And we talk about this phrase of reframing. So you're reframing the behavior rather than telling or saying that, it's misbehavior, or the child's being naughty, or they're being bold, all this language that is so typically used. Instead of saying that, we say it's stress behavior. So what stress has actually caused this behavior and emotion? And we're reframing that behavior into, rather than saying it's misbehavior, we're saying it's stress behavior. And when we do that, I feel anyway, in my experience, my sense of calmness comes down, and then I can cope and I can deal with the situation in a better way. So yeah, really about starting off with reframing that behavior and figuring out the why.
I love that. And you just said what you said, stress investigators. Is that right? Is that what did you say?
Stress detective.
Stress detectives. I like that. I like that a lot. You've come up with some lovely words and phrases when we were talking before, and you had this wonderful one called sportscasting. Can you talk us through what sportscasting is? Because it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, so sportscasting, I guess, is a strategy that we would use to, help co-regulate with a child. And I guess what I probably need to explain a little bit what co-regulation is, and it's just that we as the adults in these children's lives, as their caregivers, as parents, as educators, so we are those people in these children's lives that need to be there to co-regulate. So what I mean by co-regulation, and a reason why we have to be there to do that, is children at this age, and I guess, we're constantly developing that ability to self-reg, but children of this age don't have that ability yet. Their brains don't have the capacity to self-regulate by themselves. So it's really important that we are there to co-regulate. And we co-regulate with using a variety of strategies. And like you said, sportscasting is one of the strategies that we use. So I guess, for example, from my experience with children of this age who are, they're starting to socialize, they're learning how to socialize with their peers, with new teachers. You'll see, those conflicts arise. One child wants a pen, the other child wants the exact same pen, even though there's 10 other pens around. And, it's that conflict between two children that want the same thing. So what we do, and this is where sportscasting comes into play, is we be there, we show our presence. Presence sometimes is all that's needed. Sometimes a little bit of silence can go a long way. But when we see that the children are still, they're still in that conflict, you can see the stress is starting to build up a little bit more. So we use sportscasting, which is basically we say it how it is. So we tell the children and we tell the child what we see. So we would say like, oh, Matthew, I can see that you really want this pen right now. Yeah. And, we'll say to the other child, I can see you want this too. So it's just pausing then to get the children to become aware of what's happening. So it's building upon what we say, that stress awareness. Sometimes all children see, they're very egotistical at this age. They just want what they see, and everything is mine, mine, mine. When they look at this pen or whatever the object may be, that's mine and mine only. And sometimes they don't see the other child. They don't see the other person in this situation. So we bring upon that stress awareness. We sportscast to allow the children to see, oh, actually, yeah, Matthew does want that pen as well, and to see if they can come up with the situation and come up with the conflict resolution by themselves. And so, yeah, that's what sportscasting is. You say exactly what you see. I can see that you're really upset right now. Your mum just left. It's really hard to say goodbye to your mum. And it's that, sportscasting is there to show your understanding, to show that the emotion is okay. I understand you're upset, and it's okay. And that's so important for us to do, is to allow these children to feel these emotions. Emotions are stressors for us too. When I see children cry, it is a stressor for me. But it's really important for us to not let our stress add any more stress to the children. So we've got to, stay calm and just allow the emotion to come in. Sportscast to show your understanding of what's happening, and just allow the child to calm down slowly with you together.
I can see lots of ways where I could use sportscasting in adults' life, actually, where I could demonstrate. I can see you're upset right now, right?
Yeah. And it works. I've definitely used it with a couple of my friends. So
I can see it's absolutely wonderful. A couple of things that you're saying are really resonating with me when I'm listening to when you're framing these. I think as adults we forget that the children don't have our same cognitive ability. I know it seems obvious, but we do just forget that they don't have the same skill sets, and their brains aren't clearly not as emotional. Clearly when we sit back we go, of course, but at the time we don't give that. One little idea that you just said then that I was just thinking about is just getting ourselves right. You just said get yourself right before you. Can you talk a bit more about that? Like, I like the sound of that.
It's, I guess, when we I guess have that expectation that, we all have those expectations, those really high expectations of children to be able to cope with all these stresses, and sometimes we don't actually look into it ourselves. So we've got to understand our own stressors. We've got to look deep into our stressors and figure out, how we regulate ourselves and understand it in ourselves first. Because, if we don't know in ourselves what's happening, how can we then lend our calm? And that's a phrase that we use all the time. Another strategy, I guess, that we use and say all the time is to lend your calm. Look at these children and be with these children, be down at their level, look into their eyes and, just lend your calm. And if we're not being able to regulate ourselves, I don't see how that's possible. So it's important for you to understand, as an adult, self-regulation first, to then be able to, support and co-regulate with children. So yeah, it's just, I guess, a really important awareness to have, and to be aware of when we're stressed, but also to be aware when you're calm. And I think it's important to bring the awareness to children about when they're calm as well. We tend to only focus on the negative behaviors, or the tantrums or the misbehaviors. We tend to focus on that more so than when children are actually feeling calm. So I guess it's important to also within the day, I can see that you're really happy when you're playing with the puzzle, or I can see you're really happy when you're reading the story. So that later on, when a child is stressed and that lid has been flipped, you can redirect them and help them understand and show them, why don't we go over to read this story together? Because I know previous or yesterday you were really happy when we were reading the story together. So it's building upon awareness of stress but awareness of calmness too, if that makes sense. And again, yeah, important for us to understand that in ourselves before we can lend it to the children.
I absolutely, I'm writing down so many things. You're saying so many interesting little bits. You've got that lending your calm. I like the idea of us checking our own stresses and checking. I think quite often, I think one situation, for example, is as adults can be in a real stress situation, and we're adding to the situation.
Yeah.
When we come across that, I'm just thinking of, say, let's just do drop off in the morning, and everyone's rushing. Like you're getting out of the car, you're running late, you're doing all of this, and then you're dropping the children off at what you. All of a sudden, they're breaking into tears. Talk me through that situation. Talk me through what you'd suggest.
Yeah, so I guess this is something that we see all the time, and I think it's important for parents and for people to note that, what's happened within the morning. Sometimes like the parents wake up late, they haven't had enough time to, really connect with their children and, be there for breakfast, sit down together and have that important meal time together where you can connect. And, sometimes that's all that the children need in the mornings is just that connection. And sometimes that might not happen. Like you said, everyone's in a rush. Everyone's just trying to get into school on time. And, even when you get into school, there's more stressors. There's loads of people. You've got to bring yourself into the car park your car. You've got to get out of the car. You've got to go up into the lift. You've got to wait for the lift. Sometimes it's full. Sometimes you have to wait again. Then sometimes you're like, oh, I'll just get the stairs instead. And then that's a stressor because you've got to get the stairs. So many things can happen within that morning routine. And then, yes, when you come into class and it's that transition from parents to educators, it can be a big stress. And like I said, it's just really important to take that moment before you enter your classroom or before you enter what we have here is pods of classrooms. So important, just bring yourself down, like deregulate yourself so that when you're entering the classroom and when you've got to have that transition and the handover between parent and teacher, to calm yourself down so that you can lend your calm to your child. And also, it's important for parents to feel, I guess, that trust and security within the team and show that they're not anxious. It's that I'm not sure if you've heard of the term like interbrain connections, but it's where kind of like that Wi-Fi Bluetooth connection between two brains, and children can feel stress in other people just like we can. When you enter a room and you feel that tension straight away but you don't know what's happening, children can also feel that. So it's important for parents and educators to take away that anxiety, as easy as it is said than done, but to try and take it away and just lend that calm in the morning to the children to ease that transition.
Gosh, there's some really helpful tips that can be applied to lots. I like the way you said that, well, I guess for the parents, it might be an emotional time separating from the child in the morning. So walking in and getting yourself in a nice calm spot. You're talking about the interbrain lens, keeping the child thinking that's nice, calm situation. Talking about the anxiety. I think they're just such wonderful messages. I've got this wonderful slide that you shared with me before, which sort of talked around the 5 different steps, and I think that would be quite nice to have a look at. Let me flip through here. This one here. Can you help talk us through this?
Yeah, so I guess it's that at the beginning, instead of number 1 is that reframing the behavior. So instead of saying misbehavior, it's that stress behavior. You're really diving deep into understanding the why behind the behavior, within those 5 domains: pro-social, social, cognitive, in that area. And looking into those hidden stressors too. But I guess it's just at that very, very first thing to do is reframe this behavior. Children are not naughty. They're not misbehaving, something is happening for this child. And yes, sometimes, you know, they get to that stage where they're testing, but it's that time where they're testing for a reason, and there's something happening for that child. So again, reframing that behavior into that stress rather than misbehavior. Once you know you have that reframing mindset, then it's about recognizing the stressors. So going back to that, recognizing where it's come from. Has it come from earlier on that day? Has it come from yesterday? Is it something that's happening now? And over time, as you observe and you observe children in their play and within their like, I guess, their comfortable environments, you start to see the commonalities and the patterns of where they're becoming stressed. Number 3 then is reduce that stress. So once you've really figured out the why, and sometimes, you know, it's important to note you might not know the why. So sometimes, like I said before, it's just your presence that's needed. Maybe it's just, you know, bring your body over, bring your body down to their level, tell them that you're here. I can see you're stressed. I can see you're upset. I'm here. And sometimes it's just that, like, touch on the shoulder to let them know that you're here, and building those relationships, building those connections, and just, connecting with the children. Sometimes it's all that's needed to reduce that stress. When you do realize the why, you know, then you're showing your understanding. Like you're like that phrase from, I think it's Stephen Covey from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about, you know, seeking to understand first. So
Right.
you're always seeking to understand, and you're showing your understanding. So like I said before, that sportscasting approach where you're showing the child that I understand what's happening for you right now, and I'm here. I'm not trying to disregard your emotions or disregard what's happened. Even if I might think it's silly, it's not silly for them. You know, you're allowing them to understand that they're heard and they're being listened to and they're understood. And that's one of, like, a thing that's going to help you reduce their stress and co-regulate, which we talked about before.
Yes.
Then it's that reflection. So like I said, it's about reflecting and enhancing stress awareness. So bringing that awareness to the children about what's happening, and also about when they're feeling calm. So it's that stress awareness, and then you use that forecasting approach where you're, you know, talking to the children about what's happening for them so that they become aware. Because again, like I said before, sometimes they just don't know what's happening or don't know what's just happened for them for their lid to flip. Like I said, you know, in those conflict moments, sometimes they don't know that the other child actually was reading that book. And we see it all the time. The book might be on the floor and nobody's touching this book, but one child was reading it a minute ago. They've gone over to the other side of the classroom to get something else.
Yeah.
They've come back and they've returned to get their book, but somebody else has taken it. You know, so it's those scenarios that it can go totally overlooked because nobody is actually holding on to the book, but that child has had it in their mind that book is mine. So it's just building that awareness, you know, saying, I understand you had that book and now so-and-so has it. You know, it's just building awareness. And then it's just responding. So responding with those strategies like we just talked about, that sportscasting approach. We also use choices a lot. So we'll give children lots of choices within the day. So, and I guess this is something that could help a lot with transitions. So a really stressed, I guess, moment that happens lots, and we hear it a lot with parents is, you know, they're maybe at home and they have to transition from their house into the car to get ready to go to school or to get ready to go to the supermarket or wherever they need to go. Or else maybe it's within the classroom, it's time for us to go to the playground, or maybe time to get ready for meal times, but they don't want to go. They're too busy. And And we look into it and see, okay, I can see that they're really busy playing. They are not ready to go yet. I'm going to give them a choice, and they can either, go now or go in 5 minutes, or it might be, I'm going to give you a choice. You can walk by yourself, or I can hold your hand and we can go together. Or, do you just give all those choices? Do you want to pack this away now, or do you want to leave it here and you can play with it again later? So it's just building those choices into the child's life and giving them some power over the situation. Children at this age, they're like mini teenagers. They need that independence. They crave that independence, but they also need us there to help. So giving them some power in the situation helps a lot.
Gosh, you're coming up with so many ideas. I think it's wonderful when you go through the examples and I think the scenarios. One that quite often comes up with parents is around children having tantrums. And I've heard this. Can you talk me through strategies or just how you might apply this to that?
Yeah, and I guess tantrum is such a popular word between this age group. I'm just going to flick back to camera here.
Yes.
And sorry, excuse me. Yeah, tantrum is such a, I guess that word that's utilized a lot, and this is a word that we try to reframe. So we'll reframe it to be that emotional outburst,
or
just that stress behavior. And again, it's just important to look at the tantrum and see where it's come from, and to figure out why it's happening. And I guess they can happen in so many different scenarios. Like I said, like those transitions. Yes, where those conflict situations. Tantrums happen. Maybe they're overtired. Is that a stress? Sometimes they're undertired. Sometimes they're overtired. And it's looking at what need hasn't been met, what want hasn't been met, and you can look at it into, are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they need connection? It's all of those little things that you've got to look at first. What need hasn't been met? Have they not been given enough freedom? Have you not given them enough choice in the situation? Yeah, like I said, are they tired? Are they overtired or overstimulated? Too much light, too much noise, and certain things you can do is at a moment you turn off the lights to see if that helps, or put on a bit of music in the background, or turn it off if you've got too much going on. And just
I like it. I like those when you said those 5 areas to go back to check. I quite like thinking about those 5 areas, like you said, the physical, the emotional, and checking through those and seeing which wants and needs. I'm just trying to think. So obviously you've gone through this training, and you've actually worked with Susie and what was the doctor's name? Sorry, Mr. Stuart Shankar. You've worked with them. Can you talk us through that?
Well, yeah. So the course that we did was a 3-month course, and it was focused on self-regulation for early childhood development. So it started with a few teachers, and now I think over half of our teachers have conducted the course and completed the course. And yeah, it was a 3-month intense course on, I guess just diving really, really deep into self-regulation and what it means for children and what it means for adults in their lives, and what actually happens in the body when it's a stress, or when something's happening. And it's been really beneficial, I think, for our whole early years to really become aware of it. I think in my first year of teaching, a lot of the I guess skills you were taught to have is that ability to have classroom management, and that was a huge topic back then. Are you capable of managing your classroom? And the strategies back then would be the traffic light system and star charts and there's so many strategies back then that I think now, my gosh, how did I ever think that that was the right thing to do? And just being able to do this course and to really understand it at that deeper level has just been amazing to have. And I think for our whole center will agree that you can really see it in our children and see that emotional intelligence, really starting to blossom. And I think I think it's definitely something that will be paramount for all early years, for all schools. In the next couple of years, is definitely will be something that will be focused on a lot.
That's such a fabulous way of talking about this, because I too went through that same sort of thing. As what you're saying is, although we've gone through training and learning, there's new ideas, deeper understanding that's learnt by everyone, and now you guys are going through the professional development yourselves, and you are deeply reflecting on your past practice, thinking, gosh, if I'd only known now what I knew then, what things I would have done differently. I can see a massive advantage having, especially now, like you said, with most of the staff going through it, as the children progress through the early years, they'll get the same consistent responses, I suppose. Responses is the nice word. They'll get the same consistent responses, like you said, from each of the adults in the early years, and that's really going to benefit them. When you walk around, what do you see as different now? What would you see as different or a positive effect in the classrooms?
I guess, as I walk around, and because when you're walking around the school, it's those moments where the children are transitioning from their classroom to the playground or to, a specialist class. And it's just that sense of happiness and sense of joy to be around. And, the children are, they're just happy and joyful to be here. And that love of learning, I guess, is really felt within our school, and the teachers as well. It's like we talked about before. It's teachers are also understanding their own stressors and how they can,
Yes.
we always have lots of workload, and it's that point of view where I can deal with my stress. I can help children to co-regulate and to deal with their stressors and to manage their stress. And it's just that calm environment. It's that calm atmosphere. Everyone is just, it's a really nice feeling to walk around.
It's absolutely terrific what you're saying, and I think like all the adults watching will resonate with, like you said, recognizing your own stress as an adult. Gosh, and we understand now when we think about the children identifying their stress, you are going down beautifully and demonstrating and acknowledging that they are not feeling so good or so happy. I see massive benefits over time with everyone speaking the same language in the early years when they're going through it. And I suppose when now that you are saying a lot of these things, it explains what I'm seeing when I walk through the early years and hear them. I hear those same language or the same. I see them, talking to children through experiences. I think it'd be terrific now. Actually, now would be a great opportunity to open the floor to any parents or any questions from our audience about specific situations. That while we've got Aleesha here, how might she look at this, unpack them, and then go through perhaps how to respond. And feel free for anyone in the audience just to type into the message section. You should be able to pull that down and type into that. And if any questions come up, I should be able to show them here. I've got one question here coming in from Sarah. Thanks, Aleesha. Really interesting webinar. Are you able to recommend any tips that parents can undertake at home to continue self-regulation out of the classroom? Oh, I like that. So
really good question, Sarah. And I think it comes down to that real holistic collaboration between teachers and parents, and to have that open dialogue with your teacher to know, to have that consistency between home and school. But I guess those tips that parents can take on is, go home, have a look at and dig deep into your own stressors, and have those open dialogues with friends and colleagues and your partners and your children. Be open to letting your children know when you're also feeling certain emotions. I think when you're authentic and you're showing that side and your vulnerability with your children, then they'll be able to show that with you too, and be open to sharing their emotions with you, I guess, on a deeper level, so that you can understand what's happening for them. Obviously, if they're younger and they don't have that verbal language, just to have those moments where you're trying to figure out why, and you're not scolding them, you're not punishing them for the behavior or the emotion that they're feeling, and it's, I guess, giving them time to, and giving yourselves time to observe and try and find out what's actually happening for the children at home.
What's one very delightful thing for me is just that completely removing the concept of punishment. I think that's you. So you're just reframing the behaviour, going back to what it could be. The beautiful investigating along those senses. I've got another question here from Hula. It's more about, I guess, the ELV, and you could share your ideas around this. She's asked, how is it ensured that all teachers follow similar strategies to help children cope with their stress? And then she's gone on, the second part was, I understand Aleesha's particular background, but many teachers will have different backgrounds. So I suppose the first one is, how do you guys ensure that everyone's following similar strategies?
Yeah, and again, that's a really good question, because again, it's that consistency and that consistency of approaches from when they join us. I'm with the pre-nursery age group right now, and they join us at 18 months. So it's how do we keep that consistency from 18 months right up until they leave us here in the early learning village when they're 5 years old. And I guess one of the main things that we do is one, we keep that open dialogue between all of our teachers and staff, but we have those collaborative planning meetings every week. And again, like I said, lots of our teachers have completed the self-reg course, and we're constantly talking about how we're supporting our children with their emotions and behaviors. And I guess because we've got that open dialogue too, we don't feel, or we do feel, I guess, that sense of trust and openness with all of our teachers to have those talks with each other. I wonder why you did this, or I wonder, maybe you could do this in this way, or you could help this child in this way instead. We have a lot of co-teaching models where we're in each other's classrooms and discussing these topics together. And again, it's just that open dialogue within our meetings, ensuring that that approach is consistent across the board.
Gosh, you've jumped on some really nice. I love the sound of the co-teaching idea and the sharing. And if I'm not wrong, too, our recent professional development day, I think that all the ELV had part of teaching on professional development on this. Am I right in saying that? I think in your recent PD day.
Yes, yeah, we do. Yeah, so every term, in the early years, I think across the school, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a professional development day, and we actually had Dr. Susan Hopkins deliver a video specific to our early years just a couple of weeks ago. It was pretty amazing. She sent us, I think it was about 2.5 hours. That was solely focused on our early years, and the needs and the self-reg needs of our teachers and our students. So that self-reg is constantly being talked about. They talk about the self-reg haven, so how we can create that in our school, and yeah, like I said, just all of those open dialogues within our professional development days. Yep. And our meetings within teams.
That's terrific. I've got more lovely questions coming in here, and Anira, apologise if I haven't pronounced your name right. She's asking, what if despite, oops, sorry, it's bounced up again. I'll just go up here. We've got more questions coming. I was halfway through reading it, it bounced up. It said, what if despite getting down to eye level, sportscasting and physical touch, a child still doesn't calm down?
Yeah, so I definitely have had a few children, you know, in my class where, yeah, where none of that has worked. And one thing that has worked for me is just giving them time and space. Sometimes space for them to calm down themselves is needed, and that physical touch isn't wanted. And you know, we have that. Our motto here in the early years is love, care, respect, and that respectful relationship between teacher and child. And you know, if a child doesn't want to have that light touch on the shoulder, doesn't want to be picked up, or doesn't want to cuddle, you know, all those things will be offered. And if they don't want it, we have to respect and respect that they don't want that physical touch. So sometimes I'll say, I can see you're really upset right now. I'm just going to go and sit down over here by the books. I'm here if you need me. And, you know, give them that space. See what happens. Maybe your presence is stressing them out even more. So I would suggest maybe doing that first and seeing how the child responds in that way. I guess, yeah, it's just that you're still there, you're still within eye gaze, that they can still look around and see that you're there and find you if they need you. But you're just taking a step away. You're giving them time and space, because you know we need that too. And we've got to treat children in a way like adults as well. You know, if we wouldn't do things to, you know, your partner or your colleague, then why do them to a child? So also respect them in that way too. Respect their space, respect their boundaries. I would recommend to just take a step back and see what happens there, and to see if that helps.
Wonderful. I've got a couple more questions here. Obviously, it's a very interesting topic. Now, I'm not 100% sure, Jane, about your question, but I will read it out and maybe Aleesha can help me. Are there any visuals you use in classroom for children that you can share? Visuals.
I guess at the moment with this age group, visuals. What a visual that we always have in our class. I guess it's going to be a classroom perspective here. Are photos of the children's families, and that always tends to help too. You know, showcasing, especially when a child is transitioning new into a class. You know, we've got that sense of belonging within the classroom. And that sense of security with a family photo. You know, if they're wanting to feel safe and secure, they can go and look at their photo of their mom and dad or their sister. So we have those visuals.
Right.
We don't have any visuals that actually help at the moment with these children. You know, it's more so our connections with the children and our co-regulation strategies. But good question, and I'm really happy to kind of think more about it and share that that as well.
I think I would say that to the audience too. If they do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at the school at admissions at ais.com.sg, or to one of our admissions managers that you might have. I think we've got time for one last question before we wind it up, and it's from Julia. She's asking, are there any books that you would recommend on these strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stuart Shanker actually has a book himself. It is called, off the top of my head, Self-Reg, like how to manage stress. And I can't remember the exact wording of the book title on the top of my mind, but maybe somebody can look it up there for me and pop it in the chat. But he's got a wonderful book about self-reg and understanding it a little bit more. Also, there's lots of books from Dan Siegel about, you know, the whole brain child, and talks about, you know, the brain and what happens within the brain, just to kind of understand it a little bit deeper on that level. And we have in AIS, we have a a series called the Safe series, and it's a safeguarding series. So it's about learning about protective behaviors. And one of the books that we use is called Eve Listens to Her Feelings. And it's a story about, a little girl called Eve, and she gets upset from something that, her friends have done. And it's teaching children that they can go to somebody and chat to somebody about their feelings. And we tend to find, that book is really good for kind of the older age, probably from around 2.5, 3 and above. That, teaches children that when they are feeling certain ways, it's okay. They can go and talk to somebody that they're close to, whether it be their mom, dad, sister, caregiver, teacher, auntie, whoever it might be, whoever, the child's, I guess, closest people are, that it teaches them to I guess go to somebody and talk to them, and yes, that will help them with that co-regulation, when they feel comfortable, when they trust and have that sense of security with somebody that they can go to and have that co-regulation start.
I think that it's probably as much as we've got time for this afternoon, Aleesha. I've got some wonderful parents here who've said, I'll just pass on the messages there. I know that you probably can't see all of these, but just said, thanks, Aleesha, very interesting, useful webinar. And that was from Gal. And Hannah's helped us out. She's gone and typed into the actual comment bar. Beautiful. She's got the name. Thank you very much, Hannah, for doing that. I'd just like to say, Aleesha, thank you very much for coming along this evening. I'm absolutely sure that everyone here has found that very interesting, myself included. And I wish you all very well for the rest of the year. And I also to the rest of your masters. I know that you're finishing off your masters in psychology. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, I started that in May last year. So we'll continue with that and see where that leads me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much to all of our guests who have joined us both from Singapore and from around the world. That will be coming to the conclusion of our webinar tonight. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aleesha. You go and enjoy your evening.
Very much.
Bye-bye.